All right, good afternoon once again. So for today, we'll go ahead and discuss the first module in your finals, which is actually the module number 5, all in all, that we will talk about elements and principles of graphic design. And this is still part of empowerment technologies. So, okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the following. Okay, so these are the different topics that we will be having for today. All right, so I'll introduce what is graphic design, and we will try to define them. And of course, we will try to give you those possible jobs that you can actually have once you have decided to be a graphic designer later on. Kasi hindi naman natin alam, 'di ba, kung ano magiging future natin. Well, probably one of you will eventually see their passion in graphic designing. So that's why it's important for you to know the different or possible jobs that you have as a graphic designer. We'll also be discussing the different elements and principles of graphic design, and at the same time, the different trends and the pros and cons, or the advantage and disadvantages of being a graphic designer. So first of all, before defining or yeah, giving a definition of graphic design, let's try to define each word first. Okay? So first of all, we have here what we call graphic. Now, when we say graphic, usually the definition of graphic talks about the visual part of anything. Okay? So take a look of, or say for example, we are looking at a painting or an artwork. So anything na nakikita mo, okay, is actually the part where it focuses on the art, imagination, and at the same time the expression. Kaya nga visual ang tinatawag natin. Kasi usually doon ka nakatingin on how it was made. Yan. It involves mediums such as drawing, painting, engraving, or lettering. And it also gives clear and explicit details. While on the other hand, when we say design, okay, this time you are trying to decide or trying to uh, give meaning behind a specific artwork. So you are designing the look and function of something before it's being made. And this time, it focuses more on thinking, problem solving, practicality. Okay? And in terms of the design, there are some particular guidelines or principles that somehow be, being considered, especially sa artworks na meron tayo. So, again, when we say graphic, it focuses on the visual. When we say design, it focuses more on, thinking and problem solving. So let's try to define graphic design as a whole. So graphic design, it involves the organization and presentation of information. And it's usually developed through a creative process for a particular function. And it's also a balance of artistic expression and practical application. Now, why is it even related to the empowerment technologies and information and communications technology? Well, obviously, it's because we are trying, or graphic design is actually trying to give or present an information. And in order for you to do that, there is a specific process that you have to follow in order for you to create a graphic design artwork. Diba? So, halimbawa, gumagawa kayo ng isang poster and you would like to give or convey an information or gusto nyo lang magparating ng like for example yung mga views ninyo, 'di ba? Through poster. Now, you can do that by simply integrating something, okay? Like for example, a specific information. Yan. Pero in order for you to do that, gagamit ka ngayon ng isang process using a particular technology. Okay? So, therefore, papasok pa rin dyan ng information communications technology because we are trying to communicate some information using a certain technology. And this time, graphic design involves the balance between being an artistic or being, an artistically inclined person and at the same time, how that person can apply the knowledge that he or she has in terms of graphic designing. Okay. So, probably isa sa inyo gustong maging graphic designer dito or mahilig, mag-edit-edit ng photos, gumawa ng mga animations or videos. These are the different graphic design jobs that you might want to consider. So, yan. Can be in the form of advertising, branding, web design, interface design, magazine layout, and so on. Um, one of my major in college, and dito ako nakafocus nung college ako actually sa digital arts and animation. So, it can be considered as a graphic design. And yes, that it's true na ang graphic design kasi sa akin is actually my secondary job. So, aside from being a teacher, I also work as a graphic designer. Depende kung merong project na ibibigay or may mahanap. So, as a graphic design, malaki po ang nakukuha na salary as a graphic designer. It's because bihira ang mga graphic designer. Pero usually ang kinukuha natin na mga audiences or customers are not coming from the Philippines. I mostly get my customers or clients outside the Philippines because alam naman natin pag Pilipinas medyo kuripot kuripot sila, 'di ba? So, and yeah, graphic designer or graphic design jobs can really pay well. So, how are you going to start in graphic design? So, pwede kayo mag-start as a graphic designer by learning those tools na meron available such as the Adobe Creative Suite or yan, mga Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects, and so on. Okay? So, those are the different graphic design jobs na pwede nating makuha or maging work if you're planning to do that. And since we were talking about the graphic design and we were able to define the word graphic and the word design, let's talk about the different elements of graphic design. And when we say elements of graphic design, from the word itself, elements, it focuses on the visual side once again. So therefore, nakafocus tayo sa elements dito sa wording graphic. So usually, ito yung pinakauna nakikita natin, which talks about the color, line, shape, form, texture, typography, and the word space. So we have 7 different elements of graphic design, and we will try to discuss them. The first element of graphics design is what we call color. Now, color is one of the most important and one of the most significant element of any graphic design materials that we are looking. Well, obviously, kasi, di ba, pag tumingin ka sa isang artwork or material, the first thing that you are noticing is actually the color, di ba? And color entices a certain mood or emotion. And in graphic design, color really plays a vital role on how you will set the tone or the mood of your artwork. And you can do that by simply having a knowledge in what we call the color theory. Pag sinabi natin color theory, it's the practical guidance to color mixing and the visual effects of a specific color combination. And usually, the color wheel has its different parts. We have here what we call the primary colors, which I assume you already know. Yan. We also have the secondary colors, which is obviously the combination of two primary colors. Right? We also have here the tertiary colors, which is combination of primary and the secondary colors. So, for example, yan, red plus green, blue plus orange, and so on. And in terms of the tertiary colors, they have their, what do you call this, alternate tertiary colors. So, for example, when you combine red and orange, yan, di ba? Nagiging red-orange siya as a tertiary color. And it usually has an alternate color which is vermilion. Yan, magenta, and so on. A color wheel has its categories as well. The cool, which is the left part, and the warm side, which is the right part. And we also have what we call the pastel and neon colors. Yan. And we also have the neutral colors. So the neutral colors are simply black, white, gray, and brown. Pag pastel and neon, usually sila yung mga bright colors and saturated na colors such as ito, mga neon colors. Mga pastel yung mga light. Yan, mga light, ultralight colors na meron tayo. Yan. We also have to follow some particular color rules such as hue, value, and saturation. Ano nga ba ibig sabihin nun? We also have what we call the color palettes and the different color schemes. So in terms of hue simply means color. It's interchangeable with colors. While value, it's the way on how you add the neutral colors of an existing color. So for example, you have a green color. Now by adding a neutral color, which is like black, yan, or white, Nagkakaroon ng tinatawag natin na value sa kulay mo. Ayan, kagaya niyan. We also have here the saturation. It simply talks about how bright a color is. Usually, it is being changed by adding more gray. So the way on how you add more gray or more light gray, or more white, and your colors can now be saturated. Okay? Next is what we have, or we have what we call the color palettes. And usually it's limited to 2 to 4 colors and at least one dark colors. So basically when we say color palettes, this is only a combination of the colors that you might use in your project. And usually, it's very important to set the color palettes that you have para hindi kayo malito and para maging consistent kayo sa colors na meron. We also have here the different color schemes. We have the monochromatic colors, say for example here, it uses one color and plays with the value and saturation. So for example, from a yellow, and now by adding a black or a gray, makikita nyo yung mga monochromatic colors na related yan. We also have the analogous colors. It uses the colors beside each other in the color wheel. Yan. So yellow, purple, and dito, red and blue. We also have the complementary colors. It uses 2 colors farthest away from the color wheel. And analogous, beside each other. Complementary, ganyan. Triadic simply uses the 3 colors farthest away from each other. So, usually naka-represent yan into triangle. Ayan, so pag ganyan siya. Triadic colors. And as I have said earlier, colors can entice mood. And it can also set the tone of what you are doing. Like, for example, your logo. And the most or the very basic example here is actually the color orange, yellow, and red. Kasi madalas nating makita yung mga colors na yon sa mga pagkain. 'Di ba? It's actually because, according to the colors of psychology or psychology of colors, I should say, red, orange, and yellow entices hunger sa mga tao. So, actually, not really required, pero ginagamit talaga karamihan ng mga companies like ito, Coca-Cola, yan, mga pagkain, McDonald's, Jollibee, Greenwich. Actually, Greenwich is may red pa rin, 'di ba? Ang Greenwich. KFC is red, yan. We also have here the following, yan, yung mga soda, 'di ba? So it really triggers hunger, yan, ng isang tao. So that's one of the best examples para maipakita natin kung gaano nga ba kaimportante ang color sa application ng graphic design. Yan. It's best way to associate your company. Like for example, Army Navy and Google here, yan, they uses the following color palettes na ginamit nila para maging brand ng company nila. Now, let me introduce this software to you, or I mean, web software na tinatawag natin. So we have this website, yan, kindly check, color.adobe.com. This is actually a website in which you can use to apply or to be more consistent in terms of applying the color wheel. Now, let me give you this scenario. Say for example, I gave you a task in which you have to create or you have to make your own design of a PowerPoint. Diba? Say for example. Now, you can do that or you can use this website to pick the colors that you want. And sabi ko nga kanina, color entices mood. So depending on the topic or depending on the chosen color palettes or color schemes, yan, pwede nyo gamitin to para mas maging consistent yung paggamit yun ng color. Hindi yung basta-basta lang kayo nagpipick. So for example here, we have the analogous colors. We have here the monochromatic. We have here the triadic. Yan. Ako personally, I love using triadic colors. For example, gusto kong iset ang PowerPoint presentation ko into something like this. Yan. So by using the hex values of each color or the RGB values of each color, pwedeng-pwede nang maging mas accurate yung color natin. Okay. So let's put that into action. Yan. So For example, we have here a blank PowerPoint presentation, and I would like to use this specific color schemes na pinili natin. So I can do that by simply changing the color or proceeding with formatting the background. I hope you know how to use PowerPoint presentation, ha? So I can change the solid fill, and I can click on more colors. Then this time I'll click on custom. Mapapansin natin dito, we have here the red, green, and blue. That represents the following. Ito, so we have here, kakopy-paste yun lang yan, yung value ng red, yung value ng green, and yung value ng blue. So, it automatically gets the exact color kung anong meron dito, and it will automatically calculate the exact colors that you needed. Yan. So, for example, halimbawa ito, Empowerment Technologies. So, we have here, I title Empowerment Technologies. And we would like to use another color which is somehow related to this one, which is ito. Personally, gusto kong gamitin to. And I can change now the font color of that one by using more colors and copy and pasting the following. So, 163, 132, 156 as their value. So, kung napansin natin, I don't know kung nakikita sa monitor nyo, pero in my case, actually kitang-kita na sobrang tawag dito, sobrang sakto yung color values niya. Para sa akin talaga sakto eh. Kumbaga, nagbe-blend siya ng maayos sa mismong color natin. Yan. Let me add some shapes para at least may background lang tayo. I'm gonna remove its tapos let me get this as to give an accent to our PowerPoint presentation. And so what I'm doing here is simply copying and pasting the following colors or color values na meron tayo. Diba? So, papansin nyo talagang magbe-blend. Kung mahilig kayo sa mga neutral, mute colors, kagaya ng mga ganyan. Diba? Ang cool. Ang cute tignan ng colors. Now, the good thing about this one, we have a lot of options to choose from. Yan, you can just simply play around with that. Or, ito yung maganda, we have the following, the trends. So, halimbawa, gusto nyo gumawa ng magazine related to fashion, to graphic design, yan, to illustration, to architecture, you can use the following color schemes that you have. See, for example, gagawa ko ng game. Tapos gusto kong gumawa ng game, pero hindi ko alam kung anong specific na color schemes ang gagamitin ko. Now, pipili lang ako dito ng color schemes. So, for example, ito, gusto kong mala cyberpunk ang style ng kulay natin. I can just simply go ahead and click this one and simply copy the values of RGB. Diba? So, ganun din dito. Marami pa. You can also explore. Yan. You can also explore the following color schemes na pwedeng-pwede at pwedeng bumagay sa mood ninyo. Depende kung ano yung project na gusto nyong gawin. We have a lot of color schemes to choose from. So, I hope magamit nyo to makapag kahit pa paano ma-improve yung paggamit nyo ng colors. Kasi napaka-importante po ang colors sa lahat. Especially sa graphic designing. Okay? And if you are asking, yes, it's free. Okay? All you have to do is to sign up. Yan. Pero I think hindi naman kailangan i-sign up. Magagamit nyo naman siya agad. So, free po yan. Yan. Automatic na po nandyan. Okay? Do you have any question with this one? So, we are in the first element of graphic design, which is the most important. Kaya ito yung pinakamahaba para sa akin na i-discuss. Okay? Wala na po tayong question. Tanong na kayo ha, kung na-curious kayo, pwede po nating itanong. Ayan. That's the first. Now, let's proceed with the second element of graphic design, which is actually what we call the line. Line adds structure to a composition. Okay? It can also frame and divide the information na meron tayo. And it can also be used on the following. It can be on a way on how we stress a specific word. Okay. It can also be used to divide the information, such as in magazines. Yan. It can also be used yan, to add structures. So, for example, ito mga ganito. Yan. Next is what we call shapes. When we say shapes, it has two dimensions. And in terms of graphic design, when you place shapes together, it can make a relationship. And at the same time, it can also create an entirely new figure. And it can be applied in, in colors, in as a line, and of course, as a negative space. So we have two different types of shapes. We have the geometric, which uses the equal sides, and we have the organic, and usually it's found in the nature. Yan. It can also create other structures. Pag kinumbine mo ang shapes together, kagaya ng nakikita nyo ngayon sa screen. And next time, we have here, next element here is what we call the form. It uses three dimensions: width, height, and the depth. Ang shapes kasi focuses on 2D. Okay, 2D elements. Kapag 3D, pag form, it focuses on 3D. And it gives the distinct look and feel. Yan, with height and the depth. Like, like the shape, we have here the different types of form. Sorry, nadidistract ako. Yan. We have here the geometric that uses basic 3D shapes, and the organic, yan, uses elements from the nature. Next, another element here is what we call the texture. The texture is the way on how a surface feels. But then, in terms of graphic design, hindi kasi ito masyadong nagagamit. Pero sa painting, talagang nagagamit siya, texture. 'Di ba? So, imagine seeing a painting like in SM, tapos yan, hinahawakan mo yung mga painting mo and you feel something. It really adds and also creates some visual tone, and it can also add a value to that particular proposition ng painting na gusto mo. 'Di ba? So, that's texture na tinatawag natin. We also have the different types. We have the image types. We have environmental, man-made, and biological types of textures. We also have the pattern textures, like the following patterns. Next is typography, okay, or the proper use of fonts in graphic design, okay. Typography explicitly states the information, and it's very important to choose the specific typeface to set the tone and character. Well, imagine if some of your teachers are using this kind of font for presenting their topic in graphic design. So, for example, gumagamit sila na itong mga ganito. How would you feel about this? Diba? Medyo nakaka-distract siya. Diba? It is somehow distracting, and at the same time, magkikreate siya ng long-lasting expression na medyo hindi maganda para sa atin. Asa ba yung favorite natin gamitin dito? Ito, lagi ko nakikita to sa mga student eh. Yan. Diba? What if some of your teachers are using that? Of course, you will be distracted. That's why it's important to use a proper typefaces. Yan. Pagdating sa mga presentations natin. Now, we have the following types of typography. Sans serif. Yan. Ginagamit ang sans serif sa mga projects na kagaya nito, itong mga presentations. Ang serif fonts naman, ginagamit to sa mga outputs or activities na medyo formal ang dating, like research, mga ganyan. Diploma, yung mga serif fonts. Decorative, from the name itself, decorative, ginagamit lang siya as to decorate your graphic design project. And script, obviously ginagamit to kapag ka sa mga wedding din, yung mga title, and so on. Title ng debut, title ng wedding, title ng birthday, and so on. So usually, kino-combine po ang decorative and script sa mga ganong klaseng events. Pero kapag ka mga minimalistic or simplistic lang na, simple lang na presentation, sans serif. Okay? That's typography. So, to. Typography can be applied for different functional reasons and decorative purposes. So, functional reasons such as for magazine, yan, layouting, and of course, graphic design na rin. Decorative purposes, kagaya na nakikita nyo. Yan. Typography can also be applied as a branding, kagaya ng one of the most famous anime of all time and one of the most famous movie of all time, Harry Potter. So, by looking at their typography, their font faces, alam na natin na, 'di ba? Yan agad 'yun. Kumbaga, ito nga lang pinapakita nga lang nila minsan itong letter P lang. Alam na natin na Harry Potter agad 'yun, 'di ba? Same goes through with this one. Laging ginagamit tong font na to ng mga vloggers pagka gusto nilang for example, i-associate yung sarili nila as a ninja. So they love using this font. Diba? So that's typography. Next, we have here space. Space are simply the visual essence and dynamic of a composition. So we have here the negative space, which simply implies na kumbaga sa isang design, negative space are the part of your design which doesn't have any elements at all. While the positive space is part of your design which contains or where your elements are being placed. Now, space is very important kasi nga especially in the following applications. So, space can be applied in terms of proximity. You can also overlap them. You can also use them to adjust its transparency or opacity. And of course, pwede rin nyo rin siyang magamit for light and shadow. Space can also be used to uh, set the perspective or specific of a specific object, diba? And so on. Yun po yung tinatawag natin na space. So, we have 7 different elements of graphic design. So again, when we say elements of graphic design, these are the things, the visual aspects na nakikita natin agad sa isang graphic design. So this time, let's focus more on the design. Yan. Sa design na part ng isang artwork or isang poster na tinitingnan natin. So this time, let's talk about the principles of graphic design. So we have contrast, hierarchy, alignment, balance, proximity, repetition, movement, simplicity, and function. So the principles of graphic design here, number one, we have the contrast. From the word itself, contrast, how you make something visually interesting. And you can do that by simply contrasting either the colors, space, shapes, and of course, typography. So contrast, from the word itself contrast, pinagbabaliktad natin. Kakaroon tayo ng variation. Diba? It can really organize information. Like for example, ito, tignan natin. Diba? The poster madman here simply uses the following color schemes. Red, black, and white. Tapos, they also used uh, contrast to simply show the difference between the two characters here. Kagaya rin nitong Wicked na poster na nakikita natin. Diba? Oops, nawawala yung cursor ko. Wait lang. Hold on ha. Nawawala yung cursor ko, promise. Ayun. Okay. Next, we have hierarchy. Hierarchy can be used with contrast and it shows the important information first. It can be used sa color, sa space, sa shape, and typography. Like, for this example. So, hierarchy. Again, kung yung this is being used to properly position the characters in a specific poster. Kumbaga 'di ba, the word hierarchical position. So kung sino usually yung pinakataas, nasa taas or nasa gitna, siya yung may important role sa mga movie or sa mga posters na nakikita natin. Like for example. Next, alignment. It helps organize and clump information. And our work may be devalued if there is no proper alignment. So we have 3 different alignments. left, center, and right. So, depending on your concept, it depends on the concept that you have kung i-align mo ba yung typefaces mo or your objects or yung other elements mo sa left, sa center, or sa right. Let's take a look at the example here. So, this is one of the most common application of alignment, and they uses line as their element to, you know, to equally align their characters. Also, in Civil War, yan, meron ka ring proper alignment ng left and right to simply show that there is actually a civil war happening in this movie, obviously. Diba? And also, we have this Ocean's 8 poster which uses, again, line and alignment to properly, of course, pwede rin dito ang hierarchy, di ba? So, to properly organize the information and the sets of characters. That's alignment. Next, dito tayo ngayon sa balance. Balance are the way on how you distribute elements in a space. And magkakambal sila ng alignment. It can be done with alignment. We have two different types of balance, symmetrical and asymmetrical. So usually, obviously, symmetrical or equal distribution and asymmetrical or unequal distribution. Nowadays, hindi porke unbalanced yung distribution ng elements mo, eh pangit na. Nowadays, karamihan na rin ng mga graphic designers gumagamit ng mga ganyan na style ng designs. Pero let's take a look at the following examples here or applications of symmetrical graphic design posters. Yan. Kita natin, alignment din yan. So, sa gitna. Ganon din dito. This one, pag ganito yan, balanced. Next, ito, tignan natin tong application ng asymmetrical balance. 'Di ba? Sabi ko nga, hindi porke wala sa gitna, eh pangit na. Karamihan ginagamit ito. And they're using this concept what they call the rule of thirds in which they will place their characters or their subject dito sa may third part ng poster nila. Tapos, yun yung magiging focus. Ito, I love this. Para sa akin, gustong gusto ko tong concept ng Bohemian Rhapsody na to eh. Ayan. So, that's balance. Next, proximity. When we say proximity, it's the way on how you group similar items, ayan, so that it can form one cohesive group. It also shows how important one information is. For example, ito, proximity. Again, how you organize them, how you place them, or how you group them together. So, for example, itong My Heroes Academia, Boku no Hero Academia. Dito sa part na to, yan, more on the heroes. This one is more on the anti-heroes. Same goes through here. Itong si Optimum Pride, nandito. It also uses hierarchy, diba? Tapos, asymmetrical balance. Pero, kung napansin nyo, proximity, they try to group the humans and the robots dito sa part na to. Si Bumble Jeep saka si Optimum Pride. Yan. We also have here the Narnia. Yan. Nag-group din sila together. Pa? And so on. Ang dami. So, try to observe some posters and try to determine kung ano nga ba yung mga principles ng graphic design na ginagamit on, which is actually your activity. Repetition. From the word itself, repetition. It is also known as consistency. It organizes information as well and unify parts of the design. Like for example, ito, repetition on how you repeat. Ito napaka-random, di ba? Parang asymmetrical balance. Pero pansin nyo, it uses one element here which is itong dog paw na to. Ginamit lang, inirepeat lang. Inception, one of a great movie na rin. Yan. And The Ugly Truth. Ito, pwede ring balance, pwede ring alignment, di ba? Tapos, repetition. Pwede ring contrast. We also have here movement as a principle of graphic design. So, it's how you arrange some elements to make a moving piece. And it's add dynamism to a particular piece. Like, for example, ito. Movement. Olympic Games. Rocky. Simplicity, from the word simple. Of course, lagi natin naririnig to eh, the simpler the better, which is really true. Kasi, alam mo yun, mas maganda pa rin ang simple na design kaysa sa napaka-complicated na design. Pero depende pa rin yun sa concept ninyo. So for example here, you have a very complex design here, which is also a good-looking thing. Di ba? Siyempre, poster yan eh. Pero when they converted that one into a simplicity, yan, or using simplicity as the principle of graphic design, magigets mo agad yan kung napanood mo yung movie. Diba? It also uses to avoid an overwhelming amount of visual elements. Another example, Iron Man, 500 Days of Summer, in the Batman. Next, function. Now, when we are talking about the function as an element or as a principle of graphic design, it is actually how you try to consider the main objective of your design. Ginagawa mo ba yung design mo para mag, you know, mag-share ng iyong adhikain? 'Di ba? Ginagawa mo ba yan para magpakita ng purpose? So it's the way on how you particular communicate your ultimate goal and at the same time how you make that impression. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag natin na function. Kaya wala akong mapapakita dito na sample poster because every particular poster na nakita nyo, ngayon lang, lahat yun may function, may purpose. It's the way on how they give impression. And for as long as your intended outcome is achieved, meaning, nagkakaroon ka ng magandang output. Maganda yung output mo, maganda yung artwork mo, and you are a good graphic designer kung okay yung nagiging out or kung okay yung nagiging outcome ng ginawa mo. So that's function na tinatawag natin. And those are the different principles of graphic design that we have. Diba? So, meron tayong elements and meron na tayong principle of graphic design. Now, let's take a look at the following graphic design trends. Kasi, para magkaroon kayo ng idea, ano nga ba yung mga trending na design ngayon na nakikita natin all over the place, all over the internet. And so, we have the following. Number one, we have here what we call the minimalism. Okay? Of course, it's simplicity. Diba? Alam natin, simplicity yan. Less is more. And minimalism and observation of space, removal of texture, minimal use of color, line, and shape, and information is presented explicitly as is. Kung ano yung gusto mo ipakita, yun na yun. Diba? It can also be used as a vector-based images like the following. Yan. It uses solid colors. And kung hindi kayo marunong mag-highlight or maglagay ng shadow and highlight, it's a good way to engage yourself with a minimalistic approach of design. Ayan. Next, color palettes. Ito, importante rin na alam natin yung mga trending na color palettes. So you have here the ultraviolet, neon, duotone, muted pastels, metallics, and vintage. So you have, yan. Last 2019, salmon is the Pantone color of the year. I'm not sure kung ano yung 2020, pero I guess, I'm not sure, pero blue. Nakita ko nung last. Yan. 2018, ultraviolet. And so on. Ang ganda naman nito. Salmon color. Yan. Also, another color palette trend here. Ito laging ginagamit to eh, yung mga bright neon colors. Tapos ito, duotone kapag ka mga sa mga MTV, mga ganyan, duotones. Bright neon colors pag mga ganun din. Pagka ito kasi ang random eh, ng mga colors eh, ang ba-bright. We also have the muted pastel colors. Me personally, I love this. Ito ang mga gustong-gusto kong ginagamit na colors sa mga design ko. Muted pastel colors. We also have the following, metallic. And we have vintage colors. And we have animation. Ito kasi hindi gumagalaw eh, pero nag-animate dapat ito. So animation, it simply uses, and usually, yeah, mostly vector-based and moving text, logos, and images siya. So gumagalaw dapat yan, kaso hindi lang makita. And motion graphics, moving images and logos. We also have kinetic typography. Yan, type of motion graphic, pero this time, text ang gumagalaw din. So, itong motion graphics, yung mga element, itong mga to. Pag kinetic typography, ito lang yung mga texts lang ang gumagana. Another trend here is abstractionism and geometric patterns used for backgrounds and characters. Yan. Low poly art, for example. Ang ganda niya, no? Double exposure, result of two or more images being exposed on the same piece of a film. We have glitch. Hindi kasi nagpe-play eh. Dapat, ayun, ito. And that's one of the creepiest anime ending na napanood ko. Attack on Titan. Well, it uses glitch. Kasi nga trending siya, di ba? So it's the way on how they manipulate electronic devices physically. Yan, kagaya niyan. Paint splatter. So it's a photo manipulation technique of adding paint splatters. By the way, ito po yung isa sa mga artwork ko na ginawa dati. Tagal na rin, nung masipag pa ako. Nakikita ba yung ano ko dito? I think yeah, nakikita naman yung website. Ayun. Since I love Avengers, I created this type of artwork before. Kasi yeah, nagka-trending din kasi to eh, yung ganyan na style. Ayan. Now, if you're trying to consider a career in graphic design, this is actually the following pros and cons na meron tayo. So, we have 10 pros of being or considering a career in graphic design. Kagandahan nito, it's a creative, fun, and challenging career. Okay? Tapos, kagandahan din nito, every time you're creating your project, natututo ka lagi. Educational. And it contains multiple creative disciplines and of course, something to show off. So kapag may nagawa ka kasing something, na poster or artwork, maganda siyang i-post eh, di ba? Maganda siyang alam mo yun, i-flex kahit kanino. And also, it's the way on how you express yourself. So, as an artist, alam mo kung paano mag-express ang sarili mo. Di ba? It's also very rewarding. It's because, aside from the fact na good paying siya na trabaho, well, of course, marami kang pwedeng perks na makuha. Also, it's collaborative. If you don't want to work alone, you can also look for other graphic designers out there to work with. It's possible din yan. Yan. And career prospects. So, napakadami pong possible na mapuntahan na company because lahat na ngayon ng companies naghahanap ng graphic designers. Pansin nyo, even small Facebook pages are looking for graphic designers for their pages. Kasi sila po yung gumagawa ng mga social media posts, videos, and kung ano-ano pa. Diba? So, those are the different pros. Pag cons naman, these are the disadvantages. Number one, location specific. Ito nga, ito yung pinaka hindi lahat ng, for example, Baguio, medyo konti dito eh. Diba? Konti ang mga naghahanap ng career related to graphic design. Also, it's competitive. Marami kasing magaganda rin ng design, so medyo malaki din yung competition dito. Number three, the road is very long. That means you still have a lot to learn bago ka maging, graphic designer. You still have to master the different Adobe Creative Suites na meron tayo. Yan, no? That's also number four. Finding the right job can be very hard, which is really true. It's a desk job. If you don't want to work, or if you are the type of person who doesn't like to work, nakaharap lagi ang computer, hindi sa'yo pwede ang career sa graphic design. Ako kasi gustong-gusto kong nakaharap lang sa computer eh. So, para sa akin, it's a perfect job. It's yan. Long hours, yun din. Now, this is a disadvantage and an advantage at the same time. Disadvantage kasi you will really spend most of your time designing. Advantage kasi hindi mo namamalayan ng oras. Di ba? So, number 8, working under pressure. Ibig sabihin na ito, nakaka-stress kasi maging graphic designer din because, you have a lot of revisions, demands from your clients na kailangan mong i-meet. So, you have to work under pressure most of the time. Number 9, have to do things you do not want in working under others' direction. Well, obviously, kung hindi ka ganitong klaseng tao, if you don't want to be directed, wag ka sa career ng graphic design. And dealing with a bad slash Filipino client, para sa akin ha, ayan. Napakarami po kasi Pilipino nan sobrang kuripot. So, like for example, sir, paggawa po kami ng logo, magkano po ang budget nyo? In reality, the budget or the price of a logo or branding of a specific company, mababa po ang 5K. Pero as a Filipino client, anong marireceive kong reply? Ay, ang mahal naman yan. Sige, paggawa na lang ako sa iba. Kasi gusto nila 200, 300. Diba? Well, that's only in the Philippines. My American clients really pay around 10,000 pesos per branding or logo. Even their YouTube banners, Facebook banners, napakamahal na nun. Diba? So, yun. Those are the different things that you have to consider as a graphic designer. Now, maybe you're planning to be certified. Meron po tayo sa TESDA, kagaya ng kinuha ko dati. So, you can be a certified graphic designer like me. So, kung gusto nyong mag-apply nito, you have to take the exams, yung mga core competencies na meron tayo. You can search this one in TESDA. Pero ako kasi ang training ko officially is sa school. So, hindi na ako nag-training sa kanila. Ang ginawa ko lang is nagpa-certify lang ako. So, parang yan. Diba? So, these are the different practical skills that you need. Yan. Of course, kasi kailangan mo rin. Kung gusto mong maging graphic designer, kailangan mo nitong mga skill na to. Hindi lang marunong kang, alam mo yun, marunong kang gumamit ng mga software. You also have to have a good verbal communication. Kailangan magaling ka rin mag-drawing and sketch. You also have to have a research and software skills. Very important po dito, time management and attention to detail. Those are the different practical skills. In terms of psychological skills, you need to be objective all the time and you have to have a creative discipline and judgment. Dapat alam mo na yung ginagawa mo, umpisa pa lang, tama na based on the way on how you discipline yourself creating that. Of course, you need to have your own confidence. You are ready to receive criticism. You can cope up with failure. You are determined to finish your task and provide a good output. You are a team player. And of course, you need to be patient. Napaka laki po kasing nito trabaho ang graphic designer din. Aside from that, you also need to have the following talents. Oo, hindi lang skill yan. Dapat talented ka rin. You have imagination, curiosity, open-mindedness, passion, conceptual thinking, problem solving. You can harness creativity, and you have a good craftsmanship. Definitely, pwede ka sa graphic design. Okay? So those are the different skills that you have to consider when you are planning to be part of the graphic design industry. And again, sinasabi ko sa inyo, napaka good paying ng graphic design po. It's a good paying job. It's a good job to earn money and to feed your families in the future. So, if you're planning to learn, these are the different books that you can read. So, anyways, nasa module naman ito. These are the different essential equipments and accessories. Pero usually kasi ako digital eh. So ito lang dito sa digital. Okay, I think that's the end of the presentation for today. Mahaba-haba, ano? Do you have any questions so far?